The lobby of the Starlight Grand was made of marble and silence. At 6:03 a.m., Elijah Reese pressed the brass elevator button with a gloved hand, his polished concierge badge catching the weak sunlight bleeding through the glass doors. Behind him, a suitcase wheel squeaked. Someone was watching, but he didn't turn. He was humming again. He always did that when his mind drifted. But this time, someone recorded it. Upstairs, behind the safety of a balcony planter, Tessa's phone kept filming. The tune, delicate haunting, clung to her ribs long after it ended. She didn't know the man, didn't know the story, but the song. She'd heard it before. Weeks later, Elijah would be pouring hotel coffee when a familiar piano line echoed from a guest's phone. The song, his song, he froze. The world didn't. And outside room 1403, behind dozens of screens, a long-lost name was coming back from the dead. Elijah had spent years hiding in silence. Now the whole world was listening. The rain had started before sunrise. It drummed gently on the tall glass panels of the Starlight Grand Hotel, one of those sleek silver-laced towers that vanished into the early morning mist like a ship lost at sea. The kind of place that looked brand new, no matter how long it stood. Inside, everything gleamed: the brass luggage carts, the spotless tiles, even the faces of the young concierge team, crisp in navy uniforms and white gloves. And then there was Elijah. His blazer was a half-shade duller than the rest, his gloves a touch more worn. But no one said a word, not because they didn't notice, but because Elijah Reese was different. He moved with the grace of someone who had nothing left to prove. Elijah didn't talk much, didn't mingle with the younger staff unless asked. But every morning, precisely at 6 a.m., he'd be there adjusting the row of umbrellas, checking the orchid in the entry vase, aligning the welcome mat by a fraction of an inch. Then he'd hum, not loudly, just beneath his breath. Barely there. A drifting tune, sweet and slow, with something aching underneath. Guests often walked by without noticing. But one morning, a young woman, Tessa Harrow, 22, fresh off a red-eye from Montreal, stopped mid-step. Her ears perked. She didn't know why, but the melody caught her like a string to the heart. She turned slowly toward the sound suitcase, forgotten breath shallow. Elijah didn't notice her. He was staring past the revolving door eyes far away. Tessa pulled out her phone, hesitated, then hit record. A 20-second clip, fuzzy, room noise. But the tune stayed whole. That was all. He turned. Their eyes met briefly. She smiled. He nodded politely, then walked away. Later that day, Elijah stood behind the concierge desk organizing brochures. His movements were precise, practiced, almost ritualistic. A bellboy named Connor leaned over. "You're early again," he said with a grin. "You sleep here or something?" Elijah didn't look up. "Old habits," he said. Connor smirked. "Must have had a disciplined life before this." Elijah gave a soft chuckle. "You could say that." In the elevator alone, he allowed himself a moment. His fingers tapped against his thigh. Left, right. Pause. Left, right, again. The rhythm of something old, something buried. On the 17th floor, he stepped into the staff lounge, poured himself black coffee, and sat at the window. City below. Glass towers, endless windows, traffic lights blinking like tired eyes. And in his chest always the echo of a piano he hadn't touched in nearly 2 decades. Downstairs, Tessa checked in. She wore headphones, now replaying the clip over and over. The melody danced just out of memory's reach, like something she dreamed as a child and forgotten upon waking. She uploaded the video to her personal TikTok with the caption, "Caught the hotel." Guy humming, "This, does anyone recognize it?" No hashtags, no real expectations. She was a music theory major on a solo trip to clear her head. Her professor had told her to stop over-analyzing and feel the music again. So here she was in a 4-star hotel with a stolen melody and a gut feeling. That night she sat cross-legged on her bed laptop open, slowing the clip frame by frame. She transcribed the notes, soft minor, then lifting suddenly. Jazz but classical bones. She played it on the keyboard app. It wasn't just beautiful. It meant something. Down the hall, Elijah closed the curtains in his modest apartment. The hotel let him live in one of the old executive suites out of courtesy and discretion. He cooked lentils, fed his cat, and sat in silence. Then he opened a drawer, Inside was a folded program. Carnegie Hall Elijah Reese Trio, 1993. His fingers lingered on the edges before he slid it shut again. Shh. 2 days later, the video had 20,000 views, mostly comments like, "Why does this sound so familiar? And where is this from?" One comment stood out. "That's Elijah Reese. My dad used to play his tapes. Thought he vanished after the 99 performance." Tessa's pulse jumped. She searched the name. Found a dusty forum post, a grainy YouTube video of a jazz trio. Elijah Younger, vibrant, laughing, playing with closed eyes, lost in it. She stared at the screen, then looked out the window. Down below, she saw him standing outside the hotel, head bowed, humming, same melody. That night, it rained again. Elijah took his umbrella, walked the 6 blocks to a quiet bar. He liked the kind with no TVs and a broken jukebox. The bartender nodded. "Usual," he nodded back. "Whiskey, neat." The jazz playing overhead was canned and hollow, but something stirred. A couple near the end of the bar argued in low tones. A woman wiped her eyes with a napkin. Elijah watched for a moment, then closed his eyes. The notes came back soft and stubborn. That melody, the one that haunted him, the one he'd written the night she left. He left a tip, walked out into the mist. Back at the hotel, Tessa sat awake, listening again. She didn't know who Elijah Reese really was. Not yet. But she knew she wasn't going to leave this hotel until she found out. And somewhere behind the walls of this luxury tower, a man who once filled concert halls was polishing doorknobs in silence. Elijah's routine didn't change. Up at 5:30. Suit pressed. Shoes shined. Downstairs by 6 with the orchids realigned and the umbrella rack angled just so. He worked like a man erasing himself, one quiet task at a time. But something had changed. That week more guests lingered near the concierge desk. Some stared, some asked strange questions. "Did you ever play piano? You look like this guy I saw online." Elijah would smile faintly, give a polite shake of the head and continue on. He knew better than to stir the dust. Still, when he caught a teenage boy secretly filming him from the corner of the lobby, it sent a chill through his spine. That night, the video had passed 100,000 views. Tessa hadn't meant to start something, but the clip now lived a life of its own, stitched into remixes, played on loops, analyzed on YouTube channels by jazz enthusiasts, grasping for a name they thought was lost. Elijah Reese, one of the most underappreciated jazz pianists of the late 20th century, said one host in a video titled "The Genius Who Disappeared." Last seen performing in 1999, and then nothing. The comment sections exploded. Someone dug up an old vinyl album. Someone else posted an audio rip of his final concert. Then came the thread that broke it wide open. A blurry cell phone picture, Elijah in uniform standing behind the Starlight Grand desk. Matched perfectly to a promo photo from 1992. Same nose, same eyes. That's him. By Thursday, the hotel's phone lines were jammed. Dix. Tessa was in the elevator when she ran into him again. He held a tray of room keys. She clutched her laptop and froze. "Hi," she said. "Sorry, do you know anyone named Elijah Reese?" His eyes locked on hers for a second too long. Then he looked away. "No, miss," he said quietly. "Don't believe I do." The elevator dinged. He stepped out before she could reply. Tessa stayed there, alone, confused, guilt slowly crawling up her spine. The hotel manager called him into the office the next morning. "Is it true?" she asked gently. "Are you him?" Elijah stood hat in hand. His posture was tired, but his voice calm. "I used to play," he said. "But why didn't you tell anyone? Elijah, you're—" "I'm a concierge now," he said simply. "That's what I do." She stared at him for a long moment, unsure whether to cry or call the press. "Elijah, we're getting interview requests. Rolling Stone, NPR, even some talk show producers. They want to fly people out. I don't do that anymore. They're saying you're a legend." He smiled faintly. "That was a long time ago." She lowered her voice. "You're trending in 7 countries. People think you're dead." He nodded once. "I was." And he left. Tessa sat in the hotel cafe, laptop open, staring at the screen. She knew what she'd done. She hadn't asked permission. She'd invaded something that wasn't hers, but the world was responding with such love, such reverence. How could that be wrong? She turned to see him walk by outside the window, alone. She pushed her chair back. Outside, Elijah sat on a stone bench near the garden fountain. It was still damp from rain. "Sir?" He turned, the same faint smile. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said. "I recorded you without asking. I I never meant to. You posted the video." She hesitated. "Yes." He looked out over the street. "People have strange ways of waking the dead. I didn't think it would blow up like this. I was just the song. It felt important." "It was. Did you write it?" "Yes." She sat beside him. "Everyone's trying to figure out what happened to you," she said softly. "I left," he said. "That's what happened." "Why?" He didn't answer. Just watched a cab speed through the intersection. "Then, do you play?" "Studying jazz, music theory, still learning." He nodded slowly. "Then you'll understand soon. Music is truth, and truth costs something." The next morning, Elijah opened his door and nearly tripped on a stack of packages. Microphones, letters, a bouquet of lilies. One note read, "Thank you for the music that got me through cancer." Another, "My father used to play your records while cooking. He died last year. Hearing your song again made me cry." He stared at the handwriting, touched the envelope, and sat down on the floor. That night he opened the drawer again, took out the program, then another, this one torn from a benefit concert for New Orleans flood relief. And beneath them, a photograph. A younger Elijah, arms around a woman with a crown of curls and bright stubborn eyes. She was laughing. He was not. He stared at it for a long time, then picked up the phone, dialed. "Hello," a voice answered. Older now. Worn. Elijah said nothing for 5 seconds. Then, "Hey, Clara, it's me." A pause. "Elijah." "Yeah." Another pause. "It's been 20 years. I know. Why now?" He looked down at the floor, at the packages, the notes, the memory of the girl at the cafe saying it felt important. "I think I'm waking up again." Bye, Fees. That weekend, Elijah didn't show up for work. Tessa asked the staff where he was. No one seemed to know, but she noticed the piano in the second-floor ballroom was uncovered. A glass of water sat on the bench. She stepped closer. Sheet music handwritten rested there, the title Quiet in the Sky. She placed her hand gently on the keys and began to play. The notes wobbled at first. She didn't know the full melody, but the bones were there. Behind her, someone cleared his throat. She turned. Elijah stood in the doorway, holding his hat, eyes soft. "You're close," he said. "I've been trying to learn it." "You're the first person who's tried in a long time." He stepped into the room, sat beside her, took a breath, and played the next line. By the time Monday arrived, Elijah Reese had become an open secret. Guests were now booking rooms at the Starlight Grand, not for the skyline view, but for a chance to catch a glimpse of the man at the concierge desk, the man who once played Carnegie and then vanished. Photos were taken discreetly. TikTok edits spread like wildfire. Someone even started a subreddit called Reese is Back. Elijah ignored it all, or tried to. But it was hard to ignore when a jazz historian from Toronto left a letter at the front desk, when a music blog published an article titled "The Missing Genius of Jazz Found at a Hotel Concierge Desk," when a violinist knocked on the staff entrance asking for his autograph. He stopped humming. He worked in silence again. Even Tessa noticed the shift. That melody, the one that woke something in her, had gone quiet. But Elijah hadn't vanished. He was thinking. In the evenings, he returned to the ballroom. The old upright piano still sat under the window dust, now cleared keys worn smooth. He didn't play for long. A few bars, a few chords. His fingers stiffened easily. But the music came back, note by aching note. Tessa sometimes joined him, never uninvited, just sitting nearby, notebook in her lap, sketching phrases, asking gentle questions. Was it written for someone, she asked one night, nodding toward the melody. Yes, Elijah. He looked at her. Calm, tired, kind. "I didn't stop playing because I lost my talent," he said softly. "I stopped because I lost my reason." She didn't respond. She knew not to. He continued. "Her name was Clara. She was my everything. Manager, muse, partner. I wrote Quiet in the Sky the night she left." "Why did she leave?" "She didn't," he said. "I did. A club in New York, lights low, crowd buzzing." Elijah had just finished a set when the call came. Clara had collapsed. By the time he reached the hospital, the diagnosis was clear ovarian cancer. Aggressive. He cancelled everything. But Clara didn't want him to stop. "Promise me," she said, lying under stiff white sheets. "Promise me you'll keep playing. Don't make this all about me." He promised. He lied. When she went into remission, he froze. The fear of losing her again haunted every key. And when she relapsed, he ran. Not away from her, but away from the piano, as if silence could protect them both. "But I told myself I'd just take a break," Elijah whispered to Tessa. A few months. But months became years. Then it was too late. He laughed once dryly. "You ever notice how easy it is to disappear when no one's looking?" Tessa's eyes misted. She didn't know what to say, so she just played the next chord. Clara lived 3 subway stops away in a rent-controlled walk-up with more cats than curtains. When she opened the door, Elijah stood holding a small orchid and a record sleeve. "You kept it," she said, eyes softening. "Didn't think I would. I wasn't sure if you kept anything." They sat on opposite sides of the kitchen table, the same table where they once planned world tours over cereal. "You've gone viral, you know," she said. "Someone called me last week asking for interviews. I said no." She smiled, still stubborn. "You look good," he said, stronger. "I am." He looked around, familiar, quiet, sad. "I miss us," he said. She nodded, not speaking. "But more than that, I miss the music. What it used to feel like. You haven't touched a real piano in years." He shook his head. Clara reached across the table, took his hand. "Then maybe it's time." A week later, the hotel hosted a charity benefit for the city's jazz education program. The event planner struggled to find an available performer. Tessa volunteered. "I can play a short set," she offered. And then she paused. "I know someone better." The room was already filled when Elijah entered from the back blazer, pressed fingers twitching slightly at his side. He hadn't agreed to perform, just to attend. But when the event host, a grinning older man with a bright tie, spotted him and raised a mic. "We have a very special guest with us tonight." Heads turned, applause bubbled, and Clara, sitting quietly at a table near the rear, gave him a small nod. He stood still for a long time, then moved toward the piano. At first he just sat. The room waited. He placed his hands on the keys, stared down. His fingers hovered, paused, then moved, quiet in the sky, slower, fragile, like remembering how to breathe underwater. But it was there. Every note, the melody filled the ballroom like light. Tessa stood at the back, hand on her chest. People didn't speak. They didn't move. Some closed their eyes. And in the middle of it all, Elijah Reese played like a man both mourning and forgiving himself in real time. When the final note faded, the room stayed silent for a breath too long. Then applause rose like a wave. Clara stood first, then others. He didn't bow, just smiled, tears streaking down his cheeks, hands still resting on the keys. Later in the hallway, Tessa found him wiping his eyes with a linen napkin. "You did it," she whispered. "I almost didn't. But you did." He nodded. "Thank you." "For what?" "For waking me up." She smiled, then handed him a flash drive. "What's this?" "Your melody, my arrangement, and your old recordings. I digitized them." He looked at it. Small, simple, but powerful. "I never had a student," he said. "Not officially." "You do now," she said, "and I'm not going anywhere." He placed the drive in his pocket. Outside, the city lights glimmered like quiet stars. Elijah stayed in bed longer than usual the next morning. Sunlight pressed gently against the edge of the curtains, outlining the familiar shape of his apartment. For once, he didn't rise at dawn, didn't fold his uniform, didn't polish his name tag. Instead, he reached for the flash drive Tessa had given him. He plugged it into the old laptop he barely used, its keys worn smooth with age. The screen flickered. He opened the first file, a scratchy recording of his 1994 set at the Blue Rose Jazz Club. It had been a hot summer, the kind where the air felt thick and electric, like something big was always just about to happen. He leaned back as the first notes played, brisk, confident, full of color. His younger self had been fearless. Then he clicked on Tessa's file, her arrangement of Quiet in the Sky. It was gentler than his, slower, like she was touching a scar rather than reopening a wound. He closed his eyes and listened. Something inside him shifted. Back at the hotel, whispers swirled. Guests now requested Elijah's floor specifically. One woman left a thank you card in the lobby. Inside was a pressed flower and a note. You reminded me of my father. He played just like you. The staff tried to act normal. Connor the bellboy was the worst at hiding his excitement. I listened to your whole discography last night, he gushed during a staff break. Sir, you were amazing. Like, insane amazing. Elijah smiled, mildly embarrassed. You know the rule, Connor. No fanboying on shift. Connor grinned. Right. But can I ask something? Why did you walk away? Elijah hesitated, then gave a small shrug. Sometimes music takes everything you've got. Sometimes it gives something back. But back then, I had nothing left to give. That evening, Elijah found Clara sitting on a park bench near the Riverwalk. The sun was setting, casting gold across the water, turning the skyscrapers into soft silhouettes. He handed her a small, worn notebook. What's this? She asked. My last compositions, he said, before I stopped. She opened the first page. A melody line in pencil. Messy, but alive. Why now? Because I think I want to finish them. She looked up at him, surprised, hopeful, cautious. You really mean that? I do. A pause. Do you think it's too late? Clara smiled. You're still breathing, aren't you? In the days that followed, word of Elijah's return spread beyond music circles. A well-known talk show offered him a prime interview slot. A jazz museum in Chicago called about an exhibit. A podcast wanted a multi-part series on his disappearance. Elijah ignored most of it. But he did say yes to one thing, a small concert at the local community center. No press, no cameras. Just students' friends and a battered upright piano with half the keys slightly out of tune. Tessa sat front row, notebook in lap. Elijah played 3 pieces, old ones, forgotten ones. And when he played Quiet in the Sky this time, he didn't cry. He smiled. Afterward, students gathered around him, peppering him with questions. Where did you learn that chord? Do you improvise every run? Can you teach us that transition? Elijah laughed. I'll try, but only if you promise not to play too perfectly. They blinked. That's the thing about jazz, he said. It's about listening more than playing. But not everyone welcomed his return. Late one evening, a letter arrived at the hotel desk. No sender, no name, just an envelope marked private. Elijah opened it in his apartment. Inside was a single sentence. You don't deserve a comeback. No signature, no explanation. But he knew who it was from. Miles Forrester, an old collaborator. A rival, really. They'd performed together once, briefly. Miles had envied Elijah's touch, his natural brilliance. When Elijah disappeared, Miles rose. But even then, he couldn't fill the gap Elijah left behind. Elijah placed the letter on the counter, didn't respond, didn't need to. The music spoke louder than any bitterness. A few days later, Elijah visited the music school where Tessa volunteered part-time. He entered the small, sunlit classroom just as she was finishing a lesson on chord structures. The students were seated in a semicircle, eyes bright, notebooks open. Tessa spotted him and froze. Elijah, hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, she said, surprised. Want to help me teach the next part? He smiled, walking in. Sure, but only if they're ready for some mistakes. The students laughed. Elijah pulled a stool beside the keyboard. Here's the thing about mistakes, he said. They tell you where the truth is hiding. He placed his fingers on the keys, played a few clumsy bars, then paused. See that's me forgetting my own song. More laughter, then applause. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about being present. Later, Tessa walked with him to the streetcar stop. You've changed, she said gently. I've returned, he corrected. To what? To who I used to be, before I tried to disappear. She nodded, then added, there's something I've been wanting to ask. He looked at her, waiting. If you hadn't stopped, if you'd kept going all those years, do you think you'd be happy now? Elijah took a breath, long, quiet. I think I'd have been successful, famous maybe, but I wouldn't have met you, wouldn't have remembered what music really is. And what is it? A conversation with the world, with yourself, and sometimes with someone you never expected. The streetcar pulled up. He tipped his hat. See you tomorrow, student. She grinned. See you tomorrow, teacher. That night, Elijah returned home to find a voicemail blinking. Clara's voice soft and warm. I listened to your old compositions tonight. They're unfinished, but beautiful. Maybe we could finish one together, just like we used to. He smiled into the darkness. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone. The night of the concert arrived with no fanfare. No red carpets, no booming announcements or velvet ropes. Just a small theater nestled between two bookstores on a quiet downtown street where the only sound outside was the shuffle of shoes and the occasional clink of cafe cups across the road. Inside the house, lights were dim. Rows of folding chairs curved around a modest stage, with an upright piano, a single stool, and a soft blue curtain drawn behind. Elijah stood in the wings, hands trembling slightly. His tuxedo didn't fit quite the way it used to, looser in the shoulders, tighter at the wrists. He checked his reflection once in a backstage mirror, then looked away. The face staring back was lined and older, but calmer, more whole. Tessa approached from behind, carrying a small bouquet of calla lilies. They're from Clara, she said softly. She didn't want to overwhelm you. He smiled. She already does. Are you ready? He hesitated, then nodded. As I'll ever be. The audience filled in slowly, friends from the hotel staff, Connor, in a wrinkled button-down, trying to look professional. Guests who'd extended their stays just to see him. 3 music students from Tessa's class scribbling notes before anything had even started. And near the back, Clara. She sat still, a single hand resting over her chest as if holding in something too fragile to say aloud. The house lights dimmed further. A hush spread through the room like breath before a dive. Then Elijah stepped into view, a cane in one hand, music in the other. He didn't speak, didn't bow, just sat and placed his fingers on the keys. The first piece was old, a swing number he hadn't touched since the 90s. He stumbled once, missed a key, paused, then laughed softly into the mic. Guess it's been a while, he said. The crowd chuckled with him. Then he kept going. Each piece grew smoother, warmer. The music opened like morning light through blinds slowly but inevitably. Tessa watched from backstage, heart in her throat. She recognized the pieces from the flash drive, but something in them tonight was different. Elijah wasn't playing them the way he used to. He was playing them the way he felt them now, older, weathered, full of ache and beauty. Time had reshaped the melodies, deepened them, made them true. Then came the final song. Quiet in the Sky. The audience seemed to hold their breath. Elijah looked down at his hands, then up at the audience, and saw Clara. Their eyes locked. She nodded once. He began. The first chord landed like a memory. Soft, slow. He played without rushing, each note given space to settle like dust in morning light. Halfway through, his fingers slowed. Not from hesitation, but from emotion. He paused, and tears welled in his eyes. He didn't wipe them away. He let them fall silently onto the keys, then finished the piece with trembling hands. The final chord hung in the air for a full 5 seconds before the applause began. It didn't erupt. It rose, like a slow tide. People stood, one by one, until the entire room was on its feet, clapping, cheering, some in tears. Clara stood too, hands together, eyes shining. Elijah stood slowly. He didn't bow. He just looked out one last time and whispered, "Thank you for remembering me." Backstage, after the crowd had thinned, Tessa found him alone, still seated at the piano. "You were incredible," she said. "I was slow. You were real." He turned to her. "Promise me something. Anything. Don't wait as long as I did. To start over." She nodded, swallowed the lump in her throat. "I won't." He smiled, then reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. "What's this?" "My full original sheet music. Everything I have. You'll know what to do with it." "Are you sure?" "I'm finally done carrying it alone." She held the envelope like it was glass. 2 months later, Elijah no longer worked the concierge desk. The orchids still appeared fresh every Monday, but now the front desk held a framed photo of him playing under the soft blue light, a quiet plaque beneath it. To the man who taught us that, it's never too late to listen again. Tessa began touring her own jazz arrangements, many of them co-credited with E. Reese. One afternoon, as she performed at a jazz festival in Montreal, she opened with Quiet in the Sky. Halfway through, she spotted him in the crowd. Elijah, in a black coat, fedora tilted back, He gave her a small nod. She played the next note without missing a beat. That night, Clara and Elijah sat together on a park bench. "Same one by the river." The stars blinked overhead. "You did it," she whispered. "I didn't do it alone." "No," she agreed, "but it was always yours." He reached into his coat, pulled out a recorder. "Want to write something new?" She smiled. "You read my mind." Have you ever felt like a part of yourself faded, just quietly disappeared, and then one day someone sees you, really sees you, and the music comes back? Sometimes the things we leave behind aren't truly lost. They're just waiting for the right moment and the right people to return. So what have you buried that's still waiting to be heard? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved, you tap like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for staying till the end. We'll see you in the next one.